Hello, team. Welcome back to another Line Warcast. This is your map. We're on the patch, the new patch. I'm not sure when this video releases and what the status of the patch is. It might be live. There might be some changes to it, some further changes than what you'll see in this video, so don't take it at face value. 1v1 today. Rover 271 in blue and El Mexican in red. Rover spawns on this central island, Mexican spawning to the top right. So neither player will be able to see each other at this point. 2 docks, a town, and a barracks for red. And we don't see a building yet for blue. While they decide and think about what they want to do, here we go. Rover's putting down a dock with the transport boat immediately. Probably going to jet across here to start capping these islands. Or potentially even get a good scout off and see Mexican quite quickly. It's cute sounds from the shipyards. Second barracks, pardon me, for Mexican. And probably going to be a very slow build-up in this game because of the spawn locations and how this is a little bit of an island map. Pardon me. Industry from Mexican now. Getting this first farm. One of the things that have changed in this patch is that there's more industry per city tile. So this town could be upgraded to a city after all of these industries are taken. So these 2 farms, lumber camp, and then 2 mining sites. And the first transport boat up for Mexican, there is a trade route on this side of the map. These 2 towns and their ports will connect to this northern one, which will give a lot of income to whatever player can control it. Obviously, Mexican's in the best position to be able to do so far. And now Rover goes for a town. Factory. And potentially more stuff. Sam's out of the factory, which is a good defensive option if Mexican were to open plains. This would be at risk, and there's like other spots that Mexican could have spawned in to start the game. This is a missile ship, I believe, out of the dock. Also a very defensive option. So Rover clearly thinking anti-air a little bit. And Mexican's sitting on this island with 2 gases on it, which is super interesting. If Mexican can get this right-hand side of the map set up, then this will just be enough energy and economy to win the game. I suppose Rover has their own trade route in the bottom, which could kind of counteract one of the trade routes, but it's still a lot of economy down here. So at some point, I think blue is likely going to need to build a lot of boats to be able to push here. I said 2 docks, and I realized this is just a town. So it's just 1 dock for Mexican. Pardon me, I misspoke there. Or rather, I thought it was at first glance, I just thought it was two docks that were put down. Transport boat for Mexican is going to the bottom right at this point. Gonna land in the mountains. If Mexican could get some defenses here, it'd be really good. Based on where blue is, this might, like, I mean, we've seen how the geography of maps come into play for defensive reasons and the whole thing, but some SAMs here would stop any planes. We'll see how this develops. It's not like Mexican's going to build that right away or something. This transport boat gets intercepted. But Mexican will be able to get by the boats. I guess Mexican now sees that this is where Rover is. If we take Mexican's vision, I totally lied. They don't, but Mexican's just going up to the left-hand side at this point. Second dock finally for red. The first gas is on the way. This boat might run out of gas, but this missile ship would also run out of gas for Rover. So this has to be blue's gas that they take. The only other gas here is up in the top left. There's not, we could even actually just go to the top view to see it better, but this refinery exists top left as mentioned, and blue will have to get there to keep a navy going if they want to keep making boats. Black plumes of smoke on Mohican's boat, so they are out of gas at this point, right before this refinery finishes. And a digging of artillery on the coast from blue. So artillery along the coast is quite strong, or rather has been to this point, and there's nothing in the patch that would make this go away at the point of this recording. I don't know if there's been further changes to artillery, but a common thing we do see is the dug-in artillery along the coasts to protect these docks, and they're relatively effective at doing so. Barracks for Mohican on the right. They also have their northernmost industries starting to get set up and pushing a little bit to the left. And Rover's still sitting on tons of money, which in some ways I do like, because when you don't build production facilities or buildings, then you don't have to spend the upkeep cost of having that building. And of course, it allows you greater flexibility. Once Rover decides what they want to do, this is Rover's view. So Rover sees this, and that potentially is what this airport is in response to. But for blue, there is an argument to be made to just take all these industry. I suppose these are kind of close to the water, so they're a little bit exposed, but if you think you're going to wait 7 minutes or more to see your opponent, kind of like rough math, then you can invest in your economy. But then again, I mean, if something happens, there's enough money in the bank that blue can just put down 2 airports, 2 factories, whatever it needs to be. It'll be tough for Rover to protect this gas, I think. And we hear the gas beep beep noise for blue because they are out. Helicopters out of this airport for Rover, which are great for coastal defense. And 2 destroyers in the north for Mohican. Starting to cap all this water industry. There's 20% more water industry in this patch on the like how maps are generated, similar to the industry per city change. So one side effect that we assumed we are gonna see is that Navy is gonna be more important, or rather, you're gonna be able to make more income off of your Navy than you did previously in line war. Barracks with commandos for Mohican, who's quite quickly getting a foothold here. There's another transport boat that's gonna land to start capping this town. And this is a great play. Rover starting to move to the left-hand side of the map. If they can get a barracks down very quickly on this island and then just start capping it all and send infantry up to the north, they could be in a very decent position. The thing that blue is going to have to do is shut down this trade route, which Mohican is starting to set up with this party of 4 commandos. Capping the territory, second gas, completing this wonderful little island that Mohican has tucked away in the top right. There's a lot of economy on the north, so if this were to get a split map situation, Rover's going to need to at least have a presence on this northernmost island. Unless there's something in the bottom left, this is nuts. Mohican's already here with commandos and a transport boat. Wow, that kind of changes things. Mohican's going to have a really good foothold on the left-hand side, because they're going to use that boat to go across. 2 barracks now for Rover to start reinforcing this little island on the right. It's not even a little island, pardon me, like the whole landmass on the right. And here comes a push from Mohican. Cruiser 2 and 3 destroyers against 3 missile boats and 1 destroyer for blue. So red will win this fight. If there's another boat, so it's a destroyer coming out of this dock, there is a helicopter for Rover, and there's no missile ships for red, so here comes this response. And the helicopter can change the math a little bit on this. So let's get super zoomed in since the new patch lets us do this. Those machine gun sounds we're hearing are the commandos at the bottom of the screen. So at this point, with the 2 boats left of blue, 1 more destroyer for red is going to go down, and I wonder if this helicopter can actually kill both the destroyers. Or, of course, neither being a distinct possibility. This is tough now, because Rover has to defend this gas, and it's not going to be possible. A cruiser and 2 destroyers is going to kill this refinery before these 2 helicopters and this newly created blue destroyer is going to get there. So unfortunately, there's going to have to be a backup plan on the energy. Because Mohican's going to be able to push these boats down, potentially destroy the dock. Mohican's view here, they don't know about this, where the dock is exactly. But now these helicopters can't fly. And Mohican's got the gas. There's... Backing up is definitely a safe play, and Mohican's developing quite well economically, so I guess there's no real reason Mohican has to push there. But with the gas taken out, there's a possibility they could just end the game right now. Or at least cripple Rovers so much that it's pretty much over. Because this many boats could kill the dock. They might even be able to kill a barracks. Not at all saying that it's a mistake for red not to push. More energy infrastructure getting set up for Mohican, taking the storing the energy from these 2 refineries. And luckily for red, they have another gas that they control. Two industries for Rover, who's building a power plant. So the power plant is the backup to losing the energy. Power plants are 1/3 as efficient as a refinery, but they are good. I mean, this is relatively safe unless Mohican gets boats down here and spots this. I think it's in the forest. Here comes this landing, and it's actually an airport from Mohican, who is starting to build. This is going to be a transport plane, I believe, for these commandos. Going to start commando dropping. I think this airport could even reach Rover's Island a tiny little bit. Could land in both of those spots. And this becomes a very tough position for Rover, because this gas is going to get camped. It's going to be very difficult for Rover, pardon me, to destroy Mohican's navy here. Mohican's got a very comfortable foothold on this landmass. And if we look at the economies, Mohican's at 840, Rover at 549. The gas snipe is really just throwing a lot of, like, a huge wrench in the plans from Rover, because this would be able to reinforce relatively quick with 1 transport boat just ripping between. But now all these infantry are stranded on this island, and here comes Mohican to most certainly destroy this dock. The helicopters are going to do well just because, well, there's no missile boats here for red. But it's enough boats for red that they're going to be able to kill the dock at the very least. And here come the missile boats from Mohican, who has adjusted. 2 more cruisers on the way, packing a lot of firepower. Red's almost taken the entire top island. By this point, it's starting to prowl the coast just to search for more docks and such. I don't know if Mohican's plan is to move these boats around the south. But there's a huge potential that Rover just gets kind of blockaded on this central island. Missile boat versus helicopter. With only 1 helicopter, the missile boat will win all the time. I think it gets 1 more shot off, and it does. And then the helicopter's buddy avenges it. Buddy. The helicopter's buddy is the term. Rover at this point, unfortunately, almost needs to turn off these barracks, because if this transport boat doesn't go across, and even if it does, it's very tough. Like, so Mohican's going to build a factory now at this point. And with enough artillery pieces, this will be a tough position to break. If Rover somehow gets all these infantry over here grouped up and pushed before the first artillery piece is out, I think they could at least break this barracks. Port in the north is almost done. The port in the south is almost done. Once this is hooked up, that's a lot of economy for red. And good reactions from Mohican, who's going to stop these landings. Still not a ton of missile boats. The one missile boat that Mohican had here must have been killed by these helicopters. Commandos on the right taking on the infantry. That's enough infantry for blue on the right-hand side that they could win. The only problem now is that these infantry on the bottom are getting dragged to the boats. Infantry really aren't that great on taking on boats, especially when they're cruisers with the big guns. The helicopters would be way better. Unfortunately, they're kind of engaging the missile boats. And the port in the north is done. Finishes in the south as well, and there you go. There's the trade route. It'll start making merchant boats and generating red a ton of economy. Helicopters now for Mohican, who's landed in the south and establishing a barracks here. And these helicopters very quickly are going to be able to start harassing Blue's airport. $1,200 income for red, $579 for blue at this point. And more barracks for Mohican. Probably... Okay, it's not over here. I wonder where that barracks is. Because I think we just heard a barracks noise. Yeah, in the north. Here it is. Potentially protect that gas. I mean, this is pretty much unwinnable, I think, at this point. For blue, unfortunately. Because Mohican's going to be able to camp this trade route, which is a lot of economy. They will likely straight up win this fight. And then just slowly start pushing. So there's a discussion I've seen in the Discord about whether SAMs and missile ships should be able to shoot at planes that are landed, helicopters specifically. Because if there's a plane on an airport, the missile boats and SAMs wouldn't shoot at them individually. I think it just looks cool, and it's kind of fun to poke in missile boats and SAMs to try to get last hits. Mostly SAMs in the case where you're on a land map, like a large land mass. But I don't know. Get in the comments and say whether you think that's absurd and SAMs and missile ships should not be able to just hit land units, airplanes and helicopters that are on land. 2 airports now for Mohican. There's definitely going to be bombers out of this. This would be a very logical transition at this point in the game. 3 factories for Rover. Love this. For Rover to get sticky here. A lot of SAMs could help out against these airports. Artillery in general. Rover also sitting on a lot of money. This can definitely be invested. I think even if Rover put down 4 or 5 barracks on this part of the map, I don't even think that's... I think that's a great play. I think it's actually probably the play at this point. The only way that Rover can get back in this game is if they win this bottom landmass so hard that they can start pushing up to the cities, because there's no way off of 2 docks that Mohican's been going off of this entire game that blue is going to be able to get up enough of a navy. In large consideration due to, like, there's no gas that rover can really take all that comfortably. So just one SAM, 2 artillery pieces out of these blue factories. Mohican's now going around back to start blockading this island. And it's going to be, unfortunately for blue, perfect timing to make it so that all these SAMs can't move over. And these SAMs would be important to help deal with these helicopters. It's a full commando army for Mohican, so you can see, like, this is what Rover's view is at the moment. No shot they even see any of these commandos. The infantry don't have enough detection. So here come 3 barracks from Rover in the forest, so they're concealed. Income-wise, 619 total for Rover and 1551 for Mohican, who's about to set up another trade route. And the problem is that Mohican now has more economy to just invest more in this side of the map than Rover can, even with the bank. Because Mohican's making 550 a minute. Here come all these SAMs. They could destroy all the helicopters, and then when the artillery pieces start showing up and all this infantry, Rover might be able to counter push. The new animations that helicopters make in the patch look fantastic. We might see this interaction where helicopters land and then the SAMs attack them. Mohican immediately cancels this helicopter commander, rather, to get these helicopters out of here. Rover's got their own helicopters starting to help out, a single one here, which is great. There's potential that Rover could win this fight with the number of SAMs that they have. Unfortunately for Rover, I don't think that any of these SAMs have been seen, or commandos have been seen. No, some of them have been, but these SAMs haven't been able to clear them up in time, so a lot of blue SAMs do go down. That's tough. Commandos are difficult to deal with, especially when they're in forest, because that stealth bonus that they get. So Mohican's almost got the land units from the right-hand side of the map over here by this point. They've made their way to this town and port. And bombers now for Mohican to start shelling all the buildings, I believe, as equal priority. There's a difference in bombers in that they have their AI reworked, so they drop more bombs more consistently. They have more bombs as part of the patch, but the damage of each one of their bombs doesn't do as much. So this is a great play from Rover to start C4ing their own buildings here to get the upkeep costs back, and they can reinvest it elsewhere on the map. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of changes to the bomber. The bomber cruises as quick as an interceptor at this point. Interceptor's also getting a buff with more anti-air cannon and 2 more missiles. To deal with commandos in this forest, one of the best ways to deal with it, if you have the luxury of a lot of units, is just blob up in one big push. If you can force fights with commandos in mass, the commandos will not do that well. Really designed for those special ops, sneaking around, staying undetected situations. 2 airport bombers are going to give Mohican a ton of planes relatively quickly here. The bomber range of these airports for Mohican, if we look at it, are all the way over here. This one airport. So if they build airstrips, and Mohican builds airstrips there, they can start shelling, or bombing rather, Rover's base. I think Mohican is just going to clear this up and then start working on that. All the container ships generating a ton of economy for Mohican. Look at that thing. How can you not love it? Best unit in the whole game. Landing party For Mohican, great response with the helicopters, if this is where these helicopters are in fact going to start attacking those commandos. Look at this digging. Love it. This is pretty good for Rover at the current setup. There's one SAM on its way. It's a ton of helicopters from Mohican. And there's no more SAMs really for Rover. He will have to replenish some of those, building them out of the factory. And we hear that Mohican is putting down a ton of farms somewhere. This many bombers now just kind of snowballing and destroying all the docks. It's all the industry down here and 5 more barracks for Mohican. So this is a lot. And now blue is on a timer on the left-hand side to force this push. At this point, this Navy, there's enough here, 2 missile boats, so that Rover's going to have a very tough time reinforcing anything here. We got a helicopter against helicopter fight. And the transport plane from Mohican dropping off more commandos into a very hot landing zone. And the DPS of helicopters, when they just kind of hover over their targets, is quite a bit. They're wonderful at shredding artillery. And that's the interaction we're talking about. This SAM shot the missile at the helicopter, which was landed. Maybe I just like the look of the missile. Maybe that's also the problem. I'm biased. Firecracker for the missile boat, just like a SAM, does more damage than the actual missile. This is where the DPS comes from. But the range of this missile boat catches the helicopter. Wonderful helicopter from Rover here, destroying one artillery piece. And Rover's still got enough SAMs to be able to handle a decent number of helicopters from Mohican. Or rather, the number of helicopters that Mohican has here could be handled by just like 2 or 3 SAMs. This is an enormous amount of units, though, that is about to show up for Rover. And now the landing in the south of the main base. And Mohican will slowly push up, start bombing this base, I believe. And then the infantry push is going to roll on the left-hand side of the map. Whoops-a-daisy. Commandos in the bottom right are working on that power plant. Rather, one of them is. The other 3 are just kind of hanging out. And I mean, this is 5 bombers with... I can count. This is 6 bombers with 2 more reinforcing. So these buildings are going to be dead pretty quick. It's interesting that we're going to see more bombers potentially as part of this new meta because of the buffs and just the general change in how they behave. Commandos against the artillery. The commandos are not going to win this. The artillery is already deployed. But they, by the end of the bombing run, are going to potentially be defending nothing. Helicopters can shoot at bombers, as we see with those 2 missiles. But it's just too many. Too many bombers. It's a good amount of artillery for Rover, who's kind of hanging on in this position. But Mohican will be relatively quick to just putting down more factories if there's even any hesitation here. And these are 2 airstrips for Mohegan, which could definitely reach these, or at least the bombers would be able to be clicked at least here, I think. Yeah, okay, so these 2 airports, what am I seeing? Is the range? Yeah, maybe they're this. Bombers could definitely get here. More barracks for Rover. But Mohegan, there's no proxy bases anywhere. Power plants for Mohegan. You can see just how important oil, or rather energy, is on these Navy maps. That artillery for Rover is still going. I wonder how many kills they have. They're just crushing. Sitting in constant deployment. There's enough of a meat shield for Blue to protect the artillery pieces, which makes them super, super effective. They need medics. I'm not surprised. But this is just way more units that are going to reinforce for Mohegan, who puts down another mining camp at another town. GG. Well played. Very, very interesting game. But you can really see, like on displays, you can see how the income models kind of change in the patch. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful night, day, evening, whatever it is. We'll see you around. Peace.